So if I'm coming to your conference, I want the things I'm talking about to be fun. I want to be interactive with the audience. I want to force the audience to think about something differently, so that they're not, oh, wow, we got another conference speaker and he's going to drone on about something. I certainly don't want to be that person. I want to be somebody that's provocative, and, I'm not saying necessarily inspirational, but provoking and provocation can lead to levels of inspiration.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. And today I'm sitting down with Anthony Scaramucci, an entrepreneur, financier, founder of Skybridge Capital, and host of the SALT Conference. Anthony, welcome to the podcast.
Seth, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Happy Labor Day weekend.
Happy Labor Day weekend to you. I am excited to have you because I admire your way of speaking. I'm in the speaking business. You give a lot of speeches. I know a lot of interviews that you do and that I've seen you. They talk about all sorts of current past or the world of Wall Street that you've navigated. But I observe and analyze how you speak, and it's a really controlled, conscious effort. We here at the Keynote Curators feel words matter and words can change lives. And I just want to, for our audience who are, a lot of conference planners, do you consciously come at how you speak publicly with a measured tone? What's behind that? And is my observation even accurate?
Oh, first of all, I'll take the compliment. I guess the thing I would tell you is when I was 24, I took the Dale Carnegie course in public speaking. You said, well, why did I do that? I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett's, and he recommended it. This is going way back to 1988. He said he took it. I said, oh, well, if it's good enough for Warren Buffett, I was in the last year of law school, and I took the public speaking course. And so one of the things they teach you, and this is something Franklin Roosevelt once said, stand up, speak briefly, sit down. And so I always think about it that way. I don't want to overspeak, and I want to make sure that my sentences have some measure and some conciseness to them. But the flip side of it is, I think the number one thing in our society right now is authenticity, because we have a lot of stage management going on. We have a lot of stagecraft in speaking or production in terms of what goes on the internet or what goes on in corporate TV, corporate media. And I think the American public, or the public in general, the global public, is not satisfied with inauthenticity. And they can pick up right away when someone is being inauthentic and being boring. And so I try to give what I call non-texting speeches. What do I mean by that? I don't want people looking down at their phones while I'm speaking. And so I try to talk to them in a way where, wait a minute, it's going to be worth the next several minutes, 15,
Sure.
20, 30 minutes to hear what this guy has to say. I may learn something. He may provoke me to thinking differently, or maybe he shares my opinion, but he's going to provide more evidence. But I'll just finish the answer to the question by saying the following, though, about words. They really do matter. Inaugural addresses have mattered. Roosevelt said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Jack Kennedy once said, don't ask what we can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I'm paraphrasing.
Sure.
He also said he was going to get us to the moon inside of the decade. And of course, that happened. And just briefly, Reagan understood this. They took out of his speech the tear down the wall message to Mr. Gorbachev. State Department took it out. The ambassador took it out in Germany, West Germany at that time, and Reagan put it back in.
Yeah.
Moreover, people forget this about Ronald Reagan, but he went to visit the refuseniks. These were the Jewish dissidents in Moscow. He was told, don't do that. You're going to breach protocol. But he went and did it. Nathan Sharansky, who was finally released from these gulags, mentioned that Reagan's words mattered so much to him that he was tapping them on the pipes in the Morse code to his fellow prison mates. And so words really do matter a lot. We know this. There's a lot of power in them.
Yeah. I'm getting chills from that, truly. You, in my notes, in my observations of you, I put clear and straight, but also no gutter. And, you're often looked at as a source to get behind the curtain or behind the veil of this current administration or some recent domestic history. And I know you have also a broad view of geopolitical, and but what I was also pointing to was not the Dale Carnegie kind of core virtue of speaking, stand up, say what you need to say, and sit down, but that you stay out of the gutter. And that requires a control and a governance of the language that you use. So I just wanted to double down on my acknowledgement.
I appreciate that, but I think it's important, particularly, I've been on TV where people are going crazy. They go
Yeah.
full jihad on you, and you have a choice. You can get emotionally entwined with that, which ends up disastrous for all parties. I find that people that can control their emotions, particularly in a situation like that, are generally more well thought of, and they're also people that people look to in pressure situations. As an entrepreneur, Seth, I've experienced 9 bear markets in 37 short years, and I'm here to tell you that you got to handle yourself well in a bear market. It's
Yeah.
about temperance, and it's about having some emotional evenness. And I try to bring that to my speaking. But the flip side also is that I don't want to be stale with people. So I also try to bring some humor to these things in terms of perspective. And sometimes things don't even reflect that well on me, but I like bringing up the stories because I think they are things that add character, and they also add some level of humanity to the story. One of the worst things that could happen to somebody like me is in a feedback loop where somebody said I was condescending or pedantic. So my goal is to talk with people, not at people,
Right.
not down to people, but sort of talk with them. And again, just share my experiences as a fellow human traveler during this period of time here on Earth. And these are my observations. Some of them make me look good, some of them don't make me look good. And I try to talk about it in a way where people will look at it and say, wow, I was honest and I learned something from the exchange.
Well, as a fellow traveler in a blink of an eye on this planet, in this galaxy, in this solar system, I appreciate it. I think you may have noticed, I don't want to assume it, tell me if not, there is in the air, in the zeitgeist, a little bit of stoicism that's being woven into, we'll call them thought leaders, some literature, some books that are being published, and how as an entrepreneur, it's easy in all these different markets and geopolitical upheavals. The emotion can overtake it, and then the message gets lost, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur and you're in a meeting and you
Yeah.
get pulled in by the chemistry of your emotions, or you stay focused. And it's so important to be grounded, as you said. I want to shift a little bit to your conference. Our audience, I just want to say, hey, thanks for coming. Love us, like us. There'll be all sorts of notes on Anthony and how to book him, and you can see videos and the like. Many of our subscribers are conference planners, conference professionals, event marketers, and you have an event yourself. Talk to us a little bit about why you wanted to do an event, a conference. I know you have partners with it, and the value that you see in having that ripple effect, having the words make a difference, the impact. My thesis is events are the greatest marketing tool. They're a vehicle or a vessel to get messaging out, to get mood out, to get emotion out. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think everything that you just said, but I'll add something. We stare at a black mirror most days. And I would even include this conversation. We're both looking into a black mirror, and we're distant from each other. This is better than most because we're able to see each other's facial expressions. We're able to interact reasonably well. But most of the time, we're reacting digitally to others. Average person now, adult over the age of 21, spending 6 hours of screen time a day. And so it's an
Yeah.
extraordinary amount of screen time. And so what ends up happening, we're losing some of our social connections. So conference businesses are proliferating for a reason. Our conference is 15, 16 years old. It was fairly cutting edge 15 years ago. I've retooled it a few times to make the programming fresh or make the design different. If you had gone to one of our conferences 10 years ago, it would have been 2,200 people. Today, I've got it down to 400 or 500, but very well curated, surgically concise group of people who I think will benefit from each other. But I do think we need these conferences as a form of physical and social connection. We need to be in each other's presence more. And social media and the world of texting, all that stuff brings too much distance, and a lot gets lost in the translation. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do these conferences. But since we're talking to people that put conferences together, I would say three things quickly about conferences. Number one, I want to create a conference where the people are there and interested in meeting the other people there.
Yeah.
So think about that. And then number two, which I think is as important, I want to create a conference where people are learning from the programming perspective. And then last but not least, got to have some fun. I mean, God forbid that these conferences are not fun. It would be an epic disaster for all of us if we couldn't make them fun. So that's for me. And so if I'm coming to your conference, I want the things I'm talking about to be fun. I want to be interactive with the audience. I want to force the audience to think about something differently, so that they're not, oh, wow, we got another conference speaker and he's going to drone on about something. I certainly don't want to be that person. I want to be somebody that's provocative, and, I'm not saying necessarily inspirational, but provoking and provocation can lead to levels of inspiration.
I think the provocation is the runway for dialogue. And from there, people find some traction and some real connection. Other than finding that curating the amount and actually who the attendees are, what other design modifications did you do that made a difference?
More easy, when the venue's more intimate, the people are more intimate. When I was doing these things at the Bellagio Hotel, great venue. I'm not saying it wasn't, but when I'm doing these things at the Bellagio Hotel, they were too big. And you had some, well, I mean, it's terrible to say this, but I will say this. I want the places to be no ambulance chasing. I don't want a service provider in our industry banging on the head of a billionaire saying, hey, here's my card, and I'm going to call you 45 times while the guy's trying to take a leak in the bathroom. I don't want that. So I've made the things much more intimate, smaller. I think that's a wave of the future, by the way. Yeah, there'll be Bitcoin conferences where you have 20 or 30,000 people, but there'll also be C-suite conferences where there'll be CEOs, managing partners, managing directors, et cetera, that you'll have together that will want to meet each other, want to hang out with each other.
Yeah, I think that our audience can really relate to that. And that's kind of why they come to this podcast, is because they're really intentional about the designing and constantly looking at what's going to make a difference to provoke and have people get connected. And, for lack of the working phrase is ambulance chaser, but really people that are overreaching and it's kind of unwarranted in the space of it all. It kills the buzz. It kills the vibe a little bit. I want to turn the corner a little bit and get your thoughts. I know we're recording right before Labor Day weekend, so it's a spot in time. But in the broad strokes, many of our meeting professionals who are tiling in and our business owners, they have entrepreneurial mindset, and so whether it's literally tariffs or the broader levers of the uncertainty, the chaos, the lack of predictability, which is uncertainty in the economy. What do you say to them, for somebody who's been through so many recessions and so many bull markets and bear markets and ups and downs? What sage advice can you provide to them?
Well, number one, you got to stay in things. You can't walk away from something. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't quit at times. We all know when we've exhausted all the probabilities and we have to switch businesses or adapt or pivot. That's not what I'm saying. That's not giving up, though. If I'm in the hedge fund business and I recognize that there's a wave of digital assets coming, like we did 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not giving up by dialing back aspects of that business and dialing up the crypto business. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So when I say not giving up, that doesn't mean you have to not sometimes put things down that you were once doing that may or may not work anymore. But it's about just staying in the fight. So in my career, I will tell you that I've had 5 or 6 mega fights. I almost lost the business in '08. We made some really stupid decisions. We had too much leverage. It was a disaster for us. I almost lost the business again, believe it or not, in 2020. We were in March of 2020, the worst downdraft. I had the worst performance year of my life in 10 days, Seth. Okay, the last 10 days of March were probably the worst of my investment career. And I had gotten COVID wrong. I thought COVID was going to be like SARS or like MERS,
Right.
and it hurt our business. I didn't see it coming. And I will point out to you that, by the way, the other people that didn't see it coming in my hedge fund colleagues also had really bad performance. We all went to an event at the World Economic Forum and listened to a guy from the CDC and from the World Health Organization tell us it was going to be okay and not to worry. And man, I mean, I've done some stupid things in my career, but that's about as stupid as it gets. So what do? You stay in things. You figure out a way to adapt. You figure out a way to make things better. You listen. Go to your peers. Really try to figure out what you're doing wrong. Particularly if they're doing something right.
Yeah.
We're mimetic as a group of people. So I often tell people we're social organisms and we're mimetic. So if you want to be a great writer, read great writers. You want to be a great hedge fund manager, read and study great hedge fund managers, go see great hedge fund managers. If you want to be a great public speaker, well, who are the great public speakers? Focus on what they do, focus on what they say, focus on how they're saying it. Doesn't mean you're going to adopt their style. You've got to be native to yourself, of course, but there are things that you can pick up along the way that you can share with other people. We're oftentimes a collection of the people we're hanging out with, and I get a lot of my good ideas from my peer base, frankly.
And it's great to reach out to that peer base, or at least use them as a sounding board, whether they're aware of it or not. That takes a muscle. That's part of being an entrepreneur, and not having a problem borrowing or saying, "Oh my gosh, that's working over there. Let's maybe mold it to what we're doing." I want to turn the corner a little bit, but related to dealing with chaos, dealing with unpredictability. We're both from the New York metro area. And we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11 next year.
Yeah.
And while it wasn't a pandemic, it had sensibilities or characteristics of a pandemic, meaning it really impacted the globe for a sustained period of time. Even to today, the remnants are there. What would be your lessons learned from that on reflecting it? It was hard for everybody. Your world was right down there in the ground zero. Looking back, what could you share with us?
Well, so many lessons. So you mentioned stoicism. I think if you want a rude awakening about life, you show up, get on the train to go to work, and you're murdered an hour into your workday. And so you're not expecting that when you are parking the train at the suburban train station that morning. And I lost 40 or 50 friends like that. It'll forever be painful for me. And so it makes you contemplate about what's important about your own life. But I think geopolitically, we really did fail ourselves. We played right into what bin Laden wanted us to do. And if this were a baseball game, it's the bottom of the 7th now, 6-0 bin Laden. Now, someone would push back and say, well, bin Laden's dead. Yeah, they just replaced him with another relief pitcher. But bin Laden got this right. Bin Laden said that he would hurt us. Bin Laden said that he would spill our blood. We would overreact by sending troops into the area, bomb their mud huts. Of course, they don't think about human life the same way that we do. We lost thousands and thousands of servicemen there. Millions of people died. Hundreds of thousands were injured. And we replaced the Taliban 20 short years later with the Taliban. And so just to tell you how disastrous this was for us. But if you go back to the dark web, bin Laden's writings after the USS Cole was bombed. Remember, he bombed the
Yes, I do.
he bombed the embassies in Africa in 1998.
In the
He
Gulf.
hit the USS Cole in Yemen, in the port of Yemen. And he then said, hey, listen, you're going to come for us. We're going to hit you hard on your own homeland. You're going to come for us. You're going to spill your treasure, spill your blood. You're going to take away some of your own civil liberties. You're going to start preying on yourselves, and we will weaken your empire. And he absolutely did that.
Yeah.
And so to pretend otherwise would be to live in some level of delusion. We've racked up, we went from George Washington to George Walker Bush, $7 trillion of deficit spending. And we've now gone from Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump will have spent, ready for this, $37 trillion. So
wow.
Last 4 presidential cycles, we blew through $30 trillion. That started with the pathological recklessness of the American government post 9/11. And, we have to have that reckoning at some point if we really want to fix the country and renew the country. But we're living in the aftermath of 9/11 and the overreaction our government had to it, and the consequences of really bad fiscal discipline. And remember, Bush cut taxes in March of 2001. He had won that election, Bush versus Gore, and then he went to war in October. And it's the first time in U.S. history in 50 years. I think we had a small tax cut in 1965, and we were escalating the war in Vietnam. It was very minor. I'm talking about a major war. We usually raise taxes going into a major war. And so the lessons are there. They're geopolitical lessons. There's lessons on the human level and philosophical level about who we are and who we should be and what our becoming is and how we evolve as people. But make no mistake, our politicians played right into what bin Laden wanted us to do. And he's winning right now because our morale is down. Our tribalism is up. There's levels of populism in the country. And I think that's also pretty damaging to us,
You mentioned Washington and his famous farewell address, the non-entangling alliances. I don't know how realpolitik viable that is in a hyper-connected world. The Washington of his time was present in New York for quite a period, right? Mm-hmm. Bear with me here. I'm going to land this plane, Anthony.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm listening.
Where you're from in Long Island was quite Tory-centric.
Mm-hmm.
And you,
no question.
And you, in your upbringing, were brought up in a home where your father was a union member.
Yeah.
In contrast to the tendency of union members, was not a Democrat, was a Republican.
Right. Right.
Is there a line from Tories all the way to union members in Long Island being Republican?
There might be. It's interesting because there was such a long history of conservatism on Long Island that the unions were controlled by the Republicans. So my dad's union, when I went to go register to vote, and I filled out the selective service at the age of 18, I said, Dad, am I a Republican or a Democrat? He was insistent that I was a Republican. And interestingly enough, David Axelrod, one of Barack Obama's political strategists, now a talking head on CNN. But David, when I did his podcast years ago, he said, if I have this right, you're a Republican because your dad's union was controlled by Republicans. And then he pointed out there was only 3 or 4 counties in all of New York where the Republicans actually controlled the unions. It's mostly been controlled by Democrats. So it could go back to that. This is a bit of a fun story from Robert Caro's book. Lyndon Johnson He won almost all of New York, but he didn't win Nassau County. That's that Tory influence you're talking about. And so he shoved 5 or 6 major HUD Section 8 housing complexes into some of the richest areas of Nassau County. Okay, so he dropped a HUD project right at the base of Sands Point, which was fabled in The Great Gatsby as East Egg.
Hmm.
Put it right across the street from the IBM Country Club, and part of that is all in that lore of sort of right leaning. And by the way, Nassau County, no surprise, is Trump County. Massapequa went almost 100% for Trump, and so it's been like that for many, many years. Not always. There's been some change. Kennedy. Remember, there's lots of Catholics out here, and so when
Right.
Kennedy was running for election, his Catholicism, at least back then in the 1960s, really mattered to that group of Catholics. So yeah, it's been a mix. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's been a mix.
I think you're right. You know what I mean?
I just found that interesting, that it wasn't all like anti-crown, back then, and there is somewhat of a through line. Connecting my observation about how you use language, and then in today's world of the tribalism and Osama bin Laden winning, this is a tough one, but it's like, how do you undo the undoing? What is one step towards, on the most broadest simplistic, I'm more the pedestrian thinker of
Yeah,
the two people on this podcast, Anthony, but it's like, how do you talk to people that are hard to talk to? How do you get in where there's no opening, where there's no fissure,
yeah.
you know?
Well, I mean, let's start out with that because I think like an entrepreneur. So if you're looking at the situation, you see a zero, and then so what do entrepreneurs have to do? They've got to turn zero into one. And so that's what entrepreneurs do. Elon Musk did that with SpaceX. He recasted Tesla. He didn't create it, but he saw the vision of Tesla. And I would basically say to you that the number one thing is to see the possibility. And
Hmm.
for me, as an entrepreneur, there's a very strong voting bloc in the United States, 100 plus million people. They vote the exact same way in every single election. Those are the non-voters. Okay, they don't show up.
Mm,
And so I just want you to think about
right.
that untapped market. If you're an entrepreneur, if you could reach into that market and get them over the transom into voting, think about the possibilities of that. So yes, I hear you. Chris Christie, one of my friends, wanted to run for president in 2024, but he ran in the MAGA lane to try to out MAGA Donald Trump. Wasn't going to work. But if Chris Christie said, okay, listen, I'm going to reach out to people that haven't voted before or reach out to people that should be in this party, haven't considered this party, you would have had an easier time of it. Barack Obama did it, by the way. Barack Obama was an
Yeah.
entrepreneurial politician. He was going up against the political establishment of Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. She had locked up all the Democratic senators, all the Democratic governors in terms of their endorsements of her. And she let him continue to campaign because she thought he was going to be her HUD secretary. And he outmaneuvered her. He created a whole new market. He increased the registration count for the Democrats, and he came in with that whole coalition, beat her, and then built that coalition even broader
Yeah.
to be president. So when I hear people say it's hard or it's impossible, it's not. It is doable, but it requires that sort of entrepreneurial thinking.
Yeah. And to see the possibility, Anthony, and dare I sound pontificating here, but it's like to see the possibility requires language. Where we started requires words, requires vision, requires courage, which is no different than, I'll go back to George Washington. I mean, all they did was make a declaration against the largest empire in the world. It was just words. And then they lined their efforts and their life and their, all their actions behind those words. I'm hopeful. I know we're more tribal than ever, and people are seeing things in two different colors. but I hold the possibility. I'm aspirational in that sense, And I would say maybe I'm not a math guy, but 0 to 1. How about 0 to 0.1?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's possible. I mean, anything's possible in our country. Don't underestimate that about this country. Anything is possible. We can make things happen. We just have to get into the right mindset. People want things to happen. I mean, I don't want to bring up gun control because it's so controversial, but the polling is 85%. I don't know if you ask somebody about a school shooting, I think it's 100% they don't want there to be school shootings. So there's things we could do to make it better, but we're stuck in this stasis between the Democrats and the Republicans. They don't want to move much, but I don't think the American people are going to keep the current status quo for much longer. I do think there'll be a breach, and at that time there'll be an opportunity to remake the country.
And there it is, opportunity and possibility. I think we're going to leave it on that note with opportunity and possibility and a horizon. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming our way. It's more of open possibilities.
Well, I believe that. So, and I have a big love affair like you do with the country, and we're both successful as a result, primarily because of the luck that we had of being born in this country. I don't think I could have had any measure of success like I'm having now had I not been born here. So it's important for us to make sure that we, people say, Michael Jordan as an example as well. He was asked about his views, and he said, well, Republicans buy sneakers too. I'm not going to give you my views. And I probably lost some business giving people my views, but I love the country. So I'd rather give my views and see if I can help people think about ways we could change and how we can increase the possibilities of being more successful and more unified together.
Yeah. I've had the great fortune of, I feel like I won the genetic lottery having been born here,
Well, I mean, you got a perfect head. I mean, God made the perfect head bald. I'm suffering here with a full head of hair. So you definitely won the genetic lottery in certain ways.
And on this podcast, I'm very over-indexing on the hair and makeup. So, I'm definitely winning that one. But, I've lived overseas. I've lived in Argentina, Venezuela, Brazil. I studied in Israel. I met my wife there. My daughters are dual citizens. And I can say firsthand, other places, there's great characteristics and so many amazing possibilities. And I'm biased. I'm partial that to be an entrepreneur, to go out and express yourself and make an impact, there's a lot of opportunity and possibility here. So
no question.
Amen to that,
No question.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Great to be on with you, my brother. I really appreciate the time you give me.
You got it. Thank you so much. And to our listeners as well, this is why you come here, for these great conversations, and we'll see you next time.